All right, get ready to dive deep, because today we're tackling consciousness,
Ooh,
the
consciousness.
big one,
The big one.
that incredible mind-boggling thing we experience every single moment that we're awake.
Yeah.
Now we're diving into Joscha Bach's theories on it, and
Yeah.
I guess your notes have me seriously intrigued.
Yeah, it's a fascinating area. And Bach's approach is particularly interesting
Yeah.
because even for cognitive scientists like myself, pinning down exactly what consciousness is
Right.
and how to study it, it's a challenge.
Totally. It's like we all know we're conscious.
Yeah.
Like I'm aware of myself, you're aware of yourself, we're having this conversation.
Yeah.
But explaining
Yes,
how
yeah.
the nuts and bolts of it all inside our brains, that's where things get really wild.
Yeah.
But hey, that's the fun part, right?
Absolutely, yeah. And what Bach does so well is he makes this complex phenomenon of consciousness almost like graspable.
Okay.
He starts by looking at the basic building blocks of the brain, these cortical structures
Oh, yeah.
that form the very architecture of our thoughts and experiences.
Cortical structures, so like the scaffolding of our minds.
Exactly. Imagine the outermost layer of your brain,
Okay.
the cerebral cortex, like a vast construction site.
Okay.
But instead of bricks and steel, it's these cortical structures that are constantly being shaped and refined by our experiences.
So it's not just that we're born with a set structure and that's it.
Right.
It's constantly evolving.
Exactly. And the driving force behind this evolution, according to Bach, is something he calls reward-driven learning.
Okay, reward-driven learning. That sounds familiar. Is it what I think it is?
It is.
Okay.
It's basically the brain's way of saying, hey, that thing you just did, the one that made you feel good, let's make it easier to do that again.
Okay.
Each time we experience something rewarding,
Yeah.
it strengthens specific connections in these cortical structures.
So, like when I finally landed that skateboarding trick I'd been working on for ages.
Yes.
The feeling of accomplishment, the rush of success,
Yes.
that's my brain, like, wiring itself to hit that sweet spot again.
Exactly. Or think about a child learning to ride a bike. The
Right.
joy of success, that feeling of accomplishment when they finally pedal freely,
Yeah.
those positive emotions drive the brain to strengthen the connections that made it happen.
That makes so much sense.
Mm.
Our brains are wired to seek out those rewarding experiences. And then, like, etch them into our neural pathways.
Yes.
But how do we get from these building blocks,
Right.
these cortical structures, shaped by our experiences, to actual consciousness?
Well, this is where Bach introduces a pretty compelling concept,
Okay.
the conductor.
Okay.
Imagine that right here in the prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain right behind your forehead,
Okay.
there's this conductor-like mechanism.
Hold on. A conductor.
Yes.
Like an actual orchestra conductance?
Orchestra conductor.
Are we picturing like a tiny maestro up there with a baton calling the shots?
Not exactly. No mini maestro.
Okay.
But the analogy is helpful. Think of it more like a central hub,
Okay.
a manager, constantly receiving information from different parts of the brain.
Okay.
Senses, emotions, memories. This conductor processes all that incoming information and coordinates a response, ensuring everything runs in sync.
Okay. So if my brain is a symphony orchestra with all these different sections playing different instruments.
Yes.
The conductor is making sure it doesn't just descend into total chaos.
Exactly. The conductor helps harmonize these diverse brain processes, ensuring they function efficiently and in a unified way.
Okay.
It's this constant integration and coordination that Bach believes is key to understanding consciousness.
Wow, that's a really elegant way to think about it.
Yeah.
But how does this conductor,
Right.
or even all these interconnected brain regions, actually create the feeling of awareness?
Right.
Of like experiencing the world from inside our own heads.
Yeah.
That's what I can't quite wrap my head around.
And that's where Bach's theory takes a turn that really challenges how we typically think about consciousness.
Okay.
He suggests it's not just about experiencing things in the present moment,
Okay.
but that memory plays a much more crucial role than we might expect.
Yeah.
So it's not just about having memories like tucked away in our minds like files in a cabinet.
Right.
Bach is saying that the active process of remembering, of bringing those past experiences back online,
Okay.
that's a fundamental part of what makes us conscious.
Hold on. I think I might be getting a little lost in the weeds here.
Okay.
Are you saying that my ability to, like, vividly remember my last birthday party
Yes.
or that embarrassing thing I did in middle school, those memories are part of what make me me.
That's exactly what Bach is proposing. It's not just about processing sensory information in real time. Seeing, hearing, touching.
Yeah.
It's about having this vast library of past experiences that we can access, relive, and integrate into our current awareness.
Okay, that makes sense, but how does remembering make us conscious?
Okay, think of it this way. Imagine you have a recording of a concert.
Okay.
Just having that recording is one thing, it's just data.
Yeah.
But when you close your eyes, listen to the music, and let yourself be transported back to that moment in the crowd, feeling the excitement, the energy, that's an entirely different thing.
Right.
You're actively reconstructing that experience. And it's that act of remembering that Bach sees as being so crucial for consciousness.
You know, now that you mention it,
Yeah.
I remember this one concert I went to, and the music was amazing.
Yeah.
And when I think back on it, I can practically feel the bass drum, like, vibrating in my chest.
Wow.
So Bach would say, that's not just my imagination.
Yeah.
That's my consciousness,
Yeah.
firing on all cylinders.
Exactly. It's your brain reactivating those sensory pathways, those emotional circuits, pulling it all together into a cohesive experience in your mind.
Wow.
And it's not just about pleasant memories either.
Right.
Think about a time you were scared, really scared.
Okay.
Maybe you had a near miss while driving or something startled you.
Right.
Years later, you can still recall that feeling of adrenaline, that sense of your heart pounding.
Yeah.
It's not just that you remember it intellectually, it's that you can re-experience those sensations, those emotions, in a way that feels real.
Yeah.
That's your conscious mind weaving together the tapestry of your past experiences into your present awareness.
Okay, now my mind is officially blown.
Yeah.
So it's like our brains are constantly creating these internal virtual reality experiences out of our memories.
Yes.
That's wild. But how does this all tie back to the conductor?
Right.
Is the conductor like the keeper of our memories?
Okay.
Pulling out the right ones at the right time?
That's a great question. Bach believes that the conductor isn't just orchestrating our present experience.
Okay.
It's constantly in communication with different parts of the brain where these memories are stored.
Okay.
It's integrating those memories, those past perceptions, emotions, and thoughts into a unified experience.
So can conductors like the ultimate storyteller in our heads? Kind of.
Exactly.
Taking all these raw fragments of experience and like weaving them into our own unique personal narratives.
Yeah. Exactly. It's working behind the scenes, creating this sense of continuity, this coherent sense of self that persists through time. And without the conductor, we might have all these individual memories, these isolated sensations. But they wouldn't come together to form that unified sense of self, that ongoing experience of being conscious.
This is definitely making me see the whole memory thing in a whole new light.
Yeah.
It's not just about storage, it's about access, integration, this constant interplay between past and present.
Right.
But now I'm wondering, how does this theory deal with some of those classic thought experiments about consciousness?
Yes.
Like that whole philosophical zombie idea.
Yes, the philosophical zombie.
Right.
The classic for a reason. For those who haven't encountered this before, imagine a being that looks and acts exactly like a human. Walks, talks, maybe even listens to podcasts.
Hey, now you're talking about my audience.
Right, but here's the catch.
Okay.
This being has zero inner experience.
Okay.
It's like a perfect imitation, but with no lights on inside, so to speak.
Okay.
No feelings, no sensations, no awareness.
Right.
Philosophers have debated whether such a being is even conceivable and what it would mean for our understanding of consciousness.
Right, because if a philosophical zombie could exist, wouldn't that suggest that consciousness is somehow separate from the physical brain?
Yes.
Like it's not just about neurons firing and all that. There's something else going on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But here's where Bach's theory offers a really intriguing solution to the zombie problem. Remember how we talked about the conductor's role in accessing and reporting on the brain's inner workings?
Yeah, like it's not just organizing everything. It's also like keeping tabs on what's going on.
Precisely. Bach argues that it's this very ability, the ability to access and report on its own internal states, that underpins conscious experience.
Okay.
So in Bach's view, A true philosophical zombie wouldn't be possible.
Okay.
Because if a being had the same neural networks as us, the same conductor,
Right.
it would, by definition, have the same capacity for inner experience, for reflecting on its own processes.
Yeah.
It couldn't have all that intricate machinery without the lights being on inside.
Okay, that's a lot to unpack.
Sure.
But I think I'm starting to get it.
Okay.
If consciousness is fundamentally tied to this ability to reflect on our own mental states, then a being that lacks that ability, well, it wouldn't be conscious in the way that we understand it.
Exactly. It challenges this idea that consciousness is some magical, ethereal thing,
Right.
separate from the physical workings of the brain.
Right.
Instead, Bach's theory suggests that it's an emergent property of these very specific processes,
Yeah.
of the conductor's ability to weave together information from our senses, memories, and internal states into a continuous narrative.
So it's not what is consciousness,
Right.
but how does the brain create the conditions for consciousness?
Exactly. And this focus on function, on the how, rather than just the what,
Right.
is part of what makes Bach's theory so interesting.
Okay.
And it opens up avenues for testing these ideas, maybe even in artificial systems.
We're on that bombshell. I think my brain needs a bit of a break to process all this.
Sure.
We'll dive into the implications of Bach's theory, especially when it comes to AI, right after this. Okay, so we've established our brains are these intricate orchestras, with the conductor calling the shots and our memories playing a much bigger role in consciousness than we might have realized. But now, let's talk about those AI implications you mentioned. Could we actually build a conscious machine based on Bach's theory?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And Bach's theory definitely adds a fascinating layer to the whole debate. If consciousness is an emergent property of these specific processes in the brain, this interplay between the conductor, our senses, and our memories, then theoretically, if we could replicate those processes artificially,
we could end up with a machine that's not just intelligent, but actually conscious. I mean, that's both exhilarating and a little terrifying, don't you think?
Absolutely. It pushes us to really examine what we mean by conscious in the first place.
Yeah.
Would an AI with a conductor-like system experience the world like a human does? Would it have subjective feelings, emotions, a sense of self? These are questions we're only just starting to grapple with.
It's like we're on the verge of this whole new frontier, where the line between human and machine consciousness starts to blur. And as we get closer to potentially creating such a thing, we have to ask ourselves some tough questions.
Exactly. If we were to create an AI that genuinely possesses consciousness, our ethical responsibilities would change dramatically. Could we justify treating a conscious machine merely as a tool? Would it have rights? What would our obligations be? It's interesting, these dilemmas have been explored in science fiction for decades, but now they're becoming increasingly relevant in the real world.
Yeah, it's a lot to wrap your head around, but that's what I appreciate about Bach's theory. It gives us a tangible framework for having these conversations. It's not just philosophical speculation anymore. It's grounded in what we know about the brain.
Precisely. And while we may not have all the answers, Bach's theory encourages us to ask the right questions. We're looking for clues in the right places. Who knows, maybe one day we'll be able to build an AI that can not only process information, but actually reflect on its own existence, its own inner world.
And maybe, just maybe, that AI could even teach us something new about consciousness itself. Something we never could have discovered just by studying the human brain alone. That's a pretty mind-blowing thought.
It certainly is. As Bach himself said, the quest to understand consciousness is the most interesting intellectual adventure of our time.
I couldn't agree more. Well, on that note, I think it's time for us to wrap up this deep dive on consciousness. A huge thank you to you for breaking it all down, and to all of you listening out there. Until next time, keep those minds curious.